Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our very first actual Gemara Shiur. We did both sections of part 1 and 2 of Hachana, of the Hakdama to Gemara, the introduction to Gemara. It's on our YouTube channel. It's Yakov Horowitz. I would encourage you to have a look at that. I'm going to very, very briefly go over certain parts as it relates to the Gemara, but again, I would really encourage you, if you're watching these, I would encourage you to have a look at all of it. This is the beginning of this page illustrated here is Shiur Aleph, the first Shiur from the beginning of the Gemara. We always intended for this Sefer, for this Gemara book, to be a supplement to Gemara. Certainly not to replace the Gemara, which is why we were asked by many people to put a page of Gemara so people who were traveling didn't have to carry it along with them. But I purposely didn't want it because I absolutely do not want it to replace the Gemara. We want it to be a supplement to the Gemara. So I'm going to just go over some of the words inside in the Gemara, and then we'll take it over to the Pirush. Before we start, it's 3 o'clock here in New York. I'm going to try to get through this. It's Yom HaZikaron in Eretz Yisrael. It's a day of remembrance for the Kedoshim, for our holy brothers and sisters who died, Al Kiddush Hashem, defending our country and our people. Hashem should comfort their families. Their memories should forever be for a blessing. My wife and I were supposed to be there this year for the first time before the whole Corona thing. We had this beautiful week of lectures and everything planned, but as I get this, Mr. Hashem some other time, hopefully with Mashiach soon. So this is an actual page of Gemara of Brachos. As you can see where my cursor is on top, Misha Mesa is the name of the Perik Shlishi. It's the third Perik. That's the Perik before Tefilas Hashachar. So the next page over, it's going to say Tefilas Hashachar here on the right side, or on the side to the inside. It'll say Perik Revi of Brachos, and it'll be Chavav Amud Beis, the second side of Chavav. Now, just very briefly, like I said, I just wanted to go over it briefly. In the actual, this is the Hachana Gemara book. This is the introduction to Gemara book, where we have an outline of what a page looks like. I'll make it large. You can take a screenshot if you'd like to. I did it already, so I'm just going to briefly go over it. It goes over where the middle of the page is for Gemara. The inside of the page is for Rashi. Outside is Tefilas. Again, have a look at it, please, if you'd like, to see more in detail. And here, actually, we discussed the Shakla V'Tarya, which we're going to get to a little bit later. I'm gonna freeze it here, go back to the Gemara, and we'll come to here when we have our actual components of the Gemara itself. So this is just a larger version of the actual page of Gemara. So I'm going to read the words inside, and then we'll do it inside. So Tefilas HaShachar, the Tefillah, the prayer, the Tefillah of the morning. Shachar refers to the morning. Ad Chatzais, it's until midday, which is exactly noontime, which means basically the time where the sun is the highest in the sky. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, those are the words of the Chachamim, that it's until Chatzais. It doesn't say their name. Many times in the Gemara, the first statement is considered to be the main statement that most of the Chachamim, most of the sages, the Talmidei Chachamim of the Gemara agreed upon. And then there's a dissenting view. Someone would argue and have a different opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ad dalet sha'is. Rabbi Yehuda says it's until the 4th hour, the end of the 4th hour of the day. Tefilas HaMincha, the afternoon davening, ad ha'erev, is all the way until the evening. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer again argues ad plag HaMincha. And Tefilas HaErev, ein lakeva. The night davening is basically the entire night. V'shel musafim kal hayom. And musaf is done all day. We're going to only focus on this line and a half at the beginning because the Gemara will not go Tefilas HaMincha. Generally speaking, this is a pattern where the Mishnah here, up until the Gimel Mem, stands for Gemara. Usually, if it's a continuation, over here it will say Masnisin, Mem Saf Nun. So this Mishnah, a Mishnah is like the bottom line halacha, and the Gemara discusses many details about it. We'll ask some questions, we'll elaborate a little bit. That's all part of what we do in the Gemara. Another important piece of information, again, you can look at it in greater detail in the Introduction to Gemara, in the Hashachas Gemara book, that the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, was not written down. All of this Gemara, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, and Moshe Rabbeinu handed it over orally, taught it to Yeshua, and then on until, for many generations, until Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, a Rebbe. And at that time, people started to forget the Gemara, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi made a bold decision and said that since the Gemara was about to be forgotten, we eis la'asais l'Hashem heferus harasecha. If there's a time to do something for Hashem, we could even amend something that says in the Torah for the sake of the Torah. So we started writing it down. The people who wrote the Mishnah were called Tanoim, and the people who discussed the Gemara were Amoraim. That was a later date. And once the Mishnah was set, the halachas were set, an Amora was not able to argue on a Tana. When we get in the Gemara to practical examples, we'll get to it. And when we start here, we're going to jump back here just for a quick moment. Okay, so the second, in part two, we went over the components of a machlokes, of a discussion. Actually, the shakla v'tarya means the back and forth, the logical flow of the Gemara, and we know that the Chachamim set things up. Usually, things start with a statement, and then we get into other types of logic. In this case, it's a statement followed by a question. In our workbooks, they're set up color-coded, so a statement, a memra, you see they have this little quote bubble there, that just lets you know that it's a statement. And a kasha is like a bomb, that means it will challenge what we said before. Now, back to the page of actual Gemara. Like I said, we're not doing this Mishnah because we're actually starting from the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to go on to the piece of Tefilas HaShachar ad Chatzais, and we're going to ask a question about Netzach Hama, and we'll see that in a moment. Okay, so let's get to our Gemara, and let's examine the words inside. Now, there's a lot of written pieces here to help you follow the Gemara inside. So, step number one, I'll show you later on in subsequent shiurim. I'll show you how we keep track of each step so you can remember the shakla v'tarya, the way the Gemara goes through the steps. So this is step number one. They're numbered throughout a sugya. A sugya is a whole topic. You don't need to memorize any of those words. That's okay. You'll get to it later. So the sugya begins with a statement in our Mishnah. Again, back to the page. So here is the sugya of Gemara, right here at this point where my cursor is here. This is where the Gemara starts. So what Rabbi Spivak wrote the book, the author, what he was saying is this sugya that starts from here in the Gemara is quoting something in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, Tefilas HaShachar ad Chatzais. Tefilas HaShachar is until midday. And on that, we ask a question. Okay, so the first part is a statement, okay, a memra. You can see the word like vayomer or amar. Memra is to say. Sometimes we'll look for some patterns of words, even though the words in Aramaic very often end with an aleph. Aramaic is a different language than Hebrew, than Lashon Kodesh. But this is memra, it is a statement, and it says as follows, Tefilas HaShachar, okay, the tefillah of the morning, in parentheses, Shachris. What we generally do, if you look here, there are parentheses and brackets. The words that are actually here, like this, Tefilas HaShachar, those words itself, Tefilas HaShachar, is the exact translation, is the Tefillah of the morning. Okay, that corresponds, Tefilas HaShachar corresponds to the Tefillah of the morning. When we put a parenthesis in, that means it's what we call Shachris. If you see the word Shachar means morning, it's the same root word as Shacharis, but it's not a part of the literal translation. This is important because as you go through the book, you'll see, and as you get more and more Baruch Hashem into Gemara, you'll want to have an exact translation for the words, and then you'll also want to know what it really means. So here it means Tefilas HaShachar, the prayer. Tefillah is a prayer, Shachar is the morning davening, the morning prayer, the Tefillah of the morning here, okay, Tefillah of the morning, Tefillah means prayer. And in parentheses, it's what we call Shachris, ad chatzos, until midday. Now remember, those days they didn't have watches, okay? So we're gonna learn later, there was a way for them to measure what time is it. Most of the people were really good at it because they had to know. They had to know when to eat their meals, when to go back from work, so they just were good at looking in the sky. You can see even today they have some sundials. There's one outside the library here in Muncie, a beautiful sundial, where you're able to see from the way the sun rises and sets, there are like portions of the day. We'll get to that a little bit later. But it's interesting, the easiest time in the day was chatzos. The easiest time to see when a specific time was reached was chatzos. The word chatzi is half, okay? So chatzos is half of the day. So if you have a building that faces to the east where the sun rises, so the sun is going to be on that side the entire morning. And when the sun turns to the other side and it illuminates on the west side, then you know it's noontime. Okay, so that was like, it was just in the times of the Gemara, when people didn't have watches, this was just an easy time to, this had nothing to do with the halacha, but just a statement. So Tefilas HaShachar, you're allowed to daven ad chatzos until may be said. Okay, it doesn't say is allowed to be said, so that's a brackets, is like as if somebody was whispering that it's allowed to be said. The literal translation is until chatzos. Okay, you see that? So till chatzos, ad chatzos is an exact translation, and then we have a parentheses, 6 hours into the day. Okay, so 6 hours into the day, and the Gemara doesn't speak about it here, but it helps us if we understand the context, if we understand the big idea here. And the question really is, when it says we should daven in the morning, when does that end? That's really the question, okay? We're supposed to daven Shachris in the morning. So the morning certainly ends by chatzos, by half the day, because what do we call that's afternoon, right? That's another word, a word, afternoon. So afternoon is the time period after we hit 12 o'clock and after the sun goes on the other side of the building, on the west side, on its way down to set. So that's ad chatzos until half the day. So you could say a large description of morning would be up until noontime, and then it becomes afternoon. Okay, maybe a good way to think about this is say, when would you call it breakfast and when would you call it lunch? And in America, actually, we have a thing called brunch because it's sort of in between. We use the term brunch when it's between. Brunch is a conjunction. It's a bringing together breakfast, lunch, brunch. So I guess you could say anything before noontime is breakfast, but I don't think so. If you ate 11:30, it might not be considered that way. But that's the question. What did the Torah mean when it said you daven in the morning? The Chachamim said, most of the Chachamim, the sages of that generation, the Talmid Chachamim said it's until half the way through the day chatzos. Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, I'm going, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, again, this is an easy translation. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Rabbi Yehuda says, ad arba'a sha'os, until 4 hours. Okay, you had in the Haggadah, arba'a banim, the 4 sons, and the Haggadah, the Chacham Tam, Rosh Hashanah, right? So Arba is 4, Sha'os is an hour. So that's the halacha in the Mishnah, and that we call a memra, a statement. Tefilas hashachar ad chatzos, the tefillah of the morning is up until noontime. Rabbi Yehuda says ad arba sha'os, until 4 hours. Again, 4 hours is this is the literal translation of these words, ad arba sha'os, and into the day means 4 hours into the day. So that just gives you, again, a little bit of context. So this is the end of the memra. This is the end of the statement. Let's just get the big picture. Okay, so we have the statement, and now we're going to ask a question. And now we got to roll up our sleeves a little bit, and where the Gemara starts. Okay, so step 2 now. Again, step 1, remember, was the statement that Shachris is until 6 hours in the day or into 4 hours of the day. And now the Gemara quotes a brisa, which is a stira, a contradiction to what we learned in the Mishnah. Now, Mishnah was what Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and the Tanaim put into Mishnayos. They were extra bits of learning that were out there, and people remembered them. So Rabbi Yehuda remembered hearing from his Rebbe that it was until 4 hours. So the Gemara asks a question, v'raminhu. Again, if you go back to this page of Gemara, you see this word v'raminhu is the very first word in the Gemara is this v'raminhu. Tefilas hashachar ad chatzos was a quote from the Mishnah. And the Gemara says v'raminhu, and I'll ask you a question. Okay, and the question is as follows. So this is Rabbi Spivak, the author's text. So the word raminu tells us 2 things. First of all, it says that we look for clues to try to find out exactly what these types of questions mean. Raminu means I'll ask you a question, but there are other words for a question. A she'ela. Okay, so the raminu means I'll show you sort of a contradiction. So here, in our case, the word v'raminhu tells us that the Gemara is asking a stira, which is a contradiction, a type of a kushya. So a she'ela is a question. What time is it? When do we daven shachris? A kushya is a question. How could you say this? It should be that. And the words that follow are a brisa, which was said by a Tana. Okay? So now we're looking here. Now this whole section here is something that you'll have this throughout Gemara, and it's really, really important that you have patience when you learn Gemara, to have patience to follow the individual pieces of the Gemara, and not like kind of rush your way through, because sometimes you're missing some background information. If you pick up a Gemara by Art Scroll or some other English Gemara, it also will tell you things like this, like sort of letting you know some details that you have to know for it to make sense. We'll see over here. We'll see why it says this. So the 2 things we need to know: 2 things. First of all, a person should be saimech geula l'tefila. That's a Hebrew expression. That a person, the last words we say before Shemona Esrei is Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael. You redeem Klal Yisrael. So that's called geula. We should be saimech. We should connect. Samach means next to. Geula, the words of Go'al Yisrael, that bracha l'tefila to the Shemona Esrei. Okay, so here this means that we should not pause or interrupt at all between the bracha of Go'al Yisrael and the start of Shemona Esrei. Okay, so this is a general rule, and you'll see in a moment why this is relevant to this discussion in the Gemara. Okay, so the first thing we need to know as background information is that we're not supposed to talk. If you see, very often, if somebody after Gula, people all of a sudden will start shushing and say, shh, don't talk now, because that's why we do it like that. And in fact, many shuls, they say Go'al Yisrael together so that people won't be up to different points and be tempted to talk then. So you're not supposed to interrupt. You're supposed to go straight from the Geula, from Go'al Yisrael to the Tefillah. And secondly, a person is not supposed to daven until the day begins. And you'll see both of them how those two things fit in perfectly as it relates to the Gemara itself. Okay, so so let's do this now. So the mitzvah of Shema here. So here, mitzvasa im hanetzachama. This is the brisa that was being quoted as a question, as a kasha on the Mishnah. Okay, mitzvasa v'raminhu. I'll ask you a question. Again, let's go back to the Gemara for a second so you can see the text inside. V'raminhu, right here. I'll ask you a question. Mitzvasa, the mitzvah is im hanetzachama. Now, again, if this was a book these days, you'd put quotation marks here. V'raminhu starts here. I'll ask you a question. Mitzvasa im hanetzachama, and it would end kedei sheyismach geula l'tefila. Okay, so it would say v'raminhu. I'll ask you a question. In mitzvasa, the real mitzvah is until the im hanetzachama. The best the mitzvah is to say Kriya Shema, mitzvasa, it's mitzvah, referring to Kriya Shema. Im hanetzachama, it's right at the time, right before the rising of the sun. Kedei sheyismach, in order to make close, geula l'tefila. Remember, we had these words that Rabbi Spivak wrote here, geula l'tefila, that a person should have geula next to the tefillah, right? So Gal Yisrael next to the davening, so therefore he starts Shmona Esrei right away. Okay, so back here now, so mitzvasa, the mitzvah of Shema, see here, the mitzvah of Shema, Shema is that doesn't say here, mitzvasa means the mitzvah is. So again, that bracket means that it's not something that's translated, but instead, it's telling you that the mitzvah is the translation, and somebody's whispering in your ear, your Rebbe's whispering to you that it means Shema, im hanetzachama. Again, exact translation is with sunrise, and here we know to finish the last bracha at the sunrise. Why? Because we said that we're supposed to have geula next to tefillah, the bracha of Gal Yisrael next to Shemona Esrei, and we'll see soon that the best time. Oops, I gave you the answer. The Gemara is going to get there. All right, a time to daven. The Brisa says that a time to daven Shachris is right away in the morning. Kedei sheyismach geula l'tefillah. You should have the bracha of Gal Yisrael together with and next to Shemona Esrei. That's what we said before. We said geula l'tefillah, right? We had that right over here. Samich geula l'tefillah. And v'nimtza, and it turns out it will be found. Metzia means to find. It's Baba Metzia. We talk about. El Metzia is a parak that talks about Metzia. V'nimtza, and it will turn out mispalel b'yayim. Okay, so now we have three positions of when you could daven. Initially, we had the Memra, the Mishnah, that said the two choices are, the Chachamim said, the Rabbanan said, until Chatzais, till midday. Rabbi Yehuda said, until 4 hours of the day. But now we have a question, hold it. We have a brisa, we have a statement that says, no, you're supposed to do it in the morning, so that you could put your davening next to the tefillah, v'nimtza mispalel b'yayim, and it'll turn out that you daven during the day. Okay, let's just do this translation here, or the text here. The halacha that the Brisa just taught us is that we must finish Kriya Shema at sunrise, like right before sunrise, and begin Shemona Esrei at sunrise. So the obvious question is, you said it's either noontime, halfway through the day, or 4 hours into the day. Now we see it's supposed to be at sunrise. So we're going to answer a teretz, but beforehand, this is really helpful. It certainly is for me, might be helpful for you. Some people remember things when you see pictures of them. So throughout this book, we have dozens, hundreds of pictures to help you focus on the picture, think about it, and often, hopefully, that will help you remember it better. So these three things here, this 1, 2, 3, these three things, right? One here, this chart, right? This one here, and this one are the three different ways of learning. Here it says again, Tefilas Hashachar, according to the Chachamim. According to the Chachamim, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this shaded area, this dark orange or whatever, orange, if it's not a primary color, don't even bother. I don't know what taupe or mauve means, whatever. Orange. So that's until the 6th hour of the day. That's what the Chachamim said. And Rabbi Yehuda says only until the 4th hour. So you could daven again. So this is Rabbi Spivak, the author's words. According to the Mishnah, a person may daven Shachris for at least 4 hours. That means he may begin any time as long as he finishes within those 4 hours. However, according to the Brisa, a person has to start davening the moment he sees the sun rise. And here, this little shaded area right here, okay, this little shaded area is a reference to the right at the beginning of that first hour. That's why it's shaded like that. So we have a conflict. Now, this is just another thing. It's a little fun. It's just another visual. By the way, there's a lot of study and research that says that when you see things, images like this, it also triggers something in your mind. You know, if you smell, sometimes certain smells remind you of things, certain sights remind you of things, and you can just picture it. If you go to your grandmother every Sunday morning and she makes fresh rolls for you, okay, or you go a Friday afternoon and you smell your grandmother's challah. So if you walk by someone's home that has challah smelling like your mother on a Tuesday, you'll start thinking of Shabbos because there's an association. So there's a lot of research that supports this. So throughout the book, you'll see trains and pictures of pillars being fixed. That's really to help you trigger that there is to help your mind recall things in a better way. So if you look here, on this side, you have this train here that represents what the Mishnah said, right? The Mishnah said you may daven for at least 4 hours. See the back of the train? That's what the Mishnah says. And it's driving this, about to crash into the Brisa, that here in the back it says you must start davening at sunrise. So these two are in conflict with each other. Again, we now see that the Mishnah and the Brisa contradict each other. If you have the book, I'll stop for a moment if you want to take a screenshot or have a look at this on your own. So these are translation words. This is find the translation for the words in dark. And these are, underline the Brisa. These are different types of questions that will help you remember it. Here is a great exercise. Underline the memra. Memra was a statement. Where did the statement start and where did it end? And where did put a bracket, this type of around the kushu. When did the question start and when did it end? Okay, and we do this throughout the book. And these are matching. Stira, what is a stira? Where is it? I'm looking. Stira is... Oh, the stira in this case. Okay, I got it. I thought it was it's not a translation, right? It's a stira about the hours of the day. Okay, next Chama, sunrise. Okay, we'll just do a little bit of lesson number 3, and we're gonna stop after step 3, but we're just gonna do a little bit of this because it really flows right through. So this is step 3 now. So the Gemara answers. And we're going to stop right after this section. We'll review it all, and then we'll stop right here. So step 3 is the sugya continues with a teretz to this kasha, a teretz to the question. And the Gemara answers, Ki Tanya, when did the Brisa teach? Tanya is, when did the Brisa say this? Li vasikin. Now, vasikin are people who love mitzvahs and rush to do them. So that means it's the best thing possible. So what the Gemara answers is that there is no conflict between those two. there is no conflict between the three things here. Remember, we had three possibilities. The Chachamim said it's until 6 hours. Rabbi Yehuda said it's until 4 hours. And they were both actually arguing with each other about when they should daven. But the Brisa that mentions right by sunrise, those were talking about super special people that want to do everything just right. They want to do it perfectly right. The best time to daven Shachris, the Shemona Esrei, is to say Shema right before sunrise, and then you could have Geula next to Tefilah, so you'd like the first moment you're able to daven right at the beginning of the day. And that's considered like a hidur mitzvah. It's a betterment of a mitzvah. It's a beautiful thing that the person wasn't saying, hey, you know what, I could daven now, I could daven 1 hour in the day, 3 hours into the day, let me go have a coffee, I'll go for a walk, I'll read a book, and then I'll daven. Or you say, well, the moment it's available, I would love to be able to daven the second it starts. Obviously, not everybody does that, but that was for special people. So we had a conflict. We first thought that it's on at least 4 hours, 4 or 6 hours in the day. The Brisa said it starts at sunrise. And the answer is, that this is talking about Kitanya. When did they say this? When did this Brisa say this? Livasikin. It's specifically talking about people who love mitzvahs, and that's why they did it at that time. Last thing we're going to do before we stop, and in tomorrow's class, we're going to review those first 3 steps again. So this is another icon. It's called the visual cue. It's a visual way to be able to associate things. Hava amina here, this word hava amina, that these 2 Hebrew words means what we were thinking in the first place. Okay? So we were first thinking this, and then it was kind of broken, right? The Gemara was we had a break because the kasha of the question that we had was sort of breaking this pillar that was holding up the Gemara. Again, it's just a cute way of thinking about things, and this teretz is the cement here, and that fixes it up. So the teretz fixes up this question. So the havamina was the Brisa is talking about what everyone must do, and the maskana, the final conclusion, we call it, the last thing is that the Brisa is telling us the way the vasikin would do the mitzvah, how the best people would do the mitzvah. So there is no conflict at all right now, and the way we leave our Gemara, we can go to sleep comfortably tonight, that we don't have a conflict. The Chachamim who said 6 hours into the day, and Rabbi Yehuda who said 4 hours, we're talking about regular situation. And the Brisa that came along and seemed to throw it all upside down because he said, you see, it's by sunrise, that was only talking about special people. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you were able to follow along. If you have any questions, it's ryh@thebrightbeginnings.com. You can email if you have any questions, and I'll try to take care of it before we start. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this helpful. Be well.